I am happy to be joining you for this semester in presenting Social Work 630, which is our Practice with Individuals course. Some of you have had contact with me in previous classes, and I welcome you back into my fold, my roster, but also want to welcome those of you who are new to me, or to my teaching at least, and want to kind of walk you through the expectations of the course with this presentation and to let you know what's expected. Now, this is all information that's available to you in the syllabus, and I know it's going to be repetitious for many of you, but I hope you'll follow along with this anyway. Uh, I have just learned over the years that things that are presented in writing in the syllabus or in the Blackbird course sometimes, doesn't quite connect. And so another way of presenting that same information to you might be very helpful to you in picking up some pieces of things that you might have missed earlier. Now, just a little bit of information because most of you actually aren't familiar with me. I just want to briefly talk a little bit about myself and my own background so that you know why I'm here teaching this to you, and ask the rest of you to bear with me through this once again. My name is Bill Galic, and I have been teaching actually for the University of Alaska Anchorage for probably close to 30 years now. I think I have something close to 70 semesters under my belt as a part-time instructor. I've been working full-time up until the last 4 years when I retired from the social work field, but from full-time employment in the social work field. Uh, but throughout the years that I was in Alaska, almost all of the 28 years that I was in Alaska, I was also teaching evenings at first at Kenai Peninsula College. And years ago, the director at KPC encouraged us to begin to move some of our classes into the online format. He could see that distance education or e-learning, online courses, however you want to describe them, were a coming thing. And so he was really wanting KPC to get ahead of that curve. And I think he did a pretty good job with that. At the time, I was primarily teaching sociology and human services classes at KPC. Occasionally, I would have the opportunity to teach social work courses. And in fact, my teaching career at UAA really began with Introduction to Social Work and Introduction to Social Welfare on the undergraduate level at KPC, somewhere in the late 1980s, as I believe, 1989, 1990, perhaps. Um, I've been teaching exclusively now for the School of Social Work in online courses for the last, I think, 7 or 8 years, and I'm very happy to be doing that. Most of my focus has been upon the intro courses 106 and 206, with a few other courses on the undergraduate level here and there. And within the last year or so, I've also been able to teach graduate courses. Now, this is once again my first time through teaching this class, and so you will see, I think, some of my own ideas about how this class should proceed evolving during the semester, and I think those of you that had me for the other class previously saw some of that happen as well, and so I hope you'll bear with me through this. As for myself, I graduated from Michigan State University with a BSW in 1974, and actually it was a Bachelor of Arts in Social Work, they called it. And then in 1983, I got my MSW from Florida State University. And I've worked continuously in the social work field from the time I got my undergraduate degree in 74, working in programs such as a food stamp certification, um, public assistance, at the time it was called AFDC certification, then child protection in Florida, worked in residential treatment and care for children and adolescents in Florida for a number of years. And then moving to Alaska in 1987, I went to work as an outpatient therapist at the mental health center in Kenai for about 7 or 8 years. Finally, then moving over to work for the Office of Children's Services in Kenai, and really also Homer and Seward for many of those years, supervising actually all aspects of that operation, from taking the initial call all the way through getting children placed for adoption or returned to their families permanently. Uh, but my focus during the years with child protection was on investigations, or now it's called initial assessments, and supervising workers in those areas. So, in addition, I've had several volunteer experiences. I've been a host parent for foreign exchange students from different parts around the world, and also volunteered as a representative of the Youth for Understanding organization with other foreign students placed with other families in my area for many years, and so had quite a bit of exposure to kids from other cultures, and very bright young people from other cultures. I will add. Was also big brother in both in Michigan and in Florida, and was engaged in some other various volunteer activities here and there over the years. Of course, began the teaching that I've been doing with the UAA system has been a particular crown jewel for me. I believe I just really have enjoyed teaching and sharing what I have to share with new social workers or people who are considering social work or who are interested in it. And I'm happy to be able to do this with you once again. Now, at the present time, I'm living in northeastern Indiana, and so you'll see that my home phone number has a different area code. And I just want to remind you that I'm 4 hours ahead of you if you're in Alaska. So if you do want to call me, please keep that in mind. 10 o'clock in the evening at your place is 2 o'clock in the morning at my place, and you'll probably be waking me up. So my suggestion to you is to if you're phoning me to make your phone calls earlier in the day if at all possible. My email addresses are there. The university really does prefer us to use the edu email to communicate back and forth. However, I will tell you that my Comcast.net address is my private home address. No one else lives with me at this time, so any communication you have with me there, at least as far as the internet permits, will be private as well. And feel free also to leave messages and voicemail on both my cell and home numbers, as no one else is taking those messages. So that's how you can contact me, and you should feel free to do that at any time. I would also make myself available. I have Apple products, and so I have FaceTime, on all my products wherever I'm in wireless range, at least, and also have Skype on a couple of my devices as well. So if at any point you want to have a face-to-face with me, we can certainly arrange that as well. So I'm happy to do that and to get to know you a little bit better. So a little bit about the course. First, we'll talk about the textbooks that are assigned. When I was asked to teach this course in, it was the spring actually when it was first proposed to me, and I accepted this. The textbooks were already selected, and so these texts are not ones that I necessarily would have selected, but I know you're going to have a lot of reading in order to keep up. Now, there is another section of this course being taught, and so we're both using the same books, and the school really, for whatever reason, desires us to use the same textbooks. I've seen other universities where different sections use different textbooks covering the same material, but in any event, these are our textbooks, and do plan to do a lot of reading this semester, and you're going to find that the material in these books is excellent. So the interesting thing on this Hepworth, Rooney, and Strom Gottfield text is that this is the 10th edition, and my very first social work class I taught at the University of Central Florida at the School of Social Work there in it was 1986, as I recall, right before I left Florida. And this was the textbook that we used for that class. It was a 400 level micro interventions course. And I really liked that textbook then, still like it a lot. You'll find there's a lot of very, very interesting material. I think that it goes into gives you a lot of very helpful information in terms of working with clients, and it goes over a number of different skills that you need to have in order to to work successfully with clients, mostly on an individual level. Now there are some chapters in this book involving groups and families which we're going to skip over because you have a practice course coming ahead, or you've already have it had it, I don't know, on groups, and so we're not going to go over those. We're not going to go over those chapters in this textbook. As I said, you have a lot of reading to do, and it was just necessary to pick which chapters we're going to cover. And we're covering almost all of these textbooks, but some of them I'm kind of eliminating because you're gonna go over the material in other classes, and so in any event, you're gonna I think appreciate the approach that these authors provide you. It's a very readable textbook, and I think very useful, and one that I hope that you have hardback for. And I know that more and more of these publishers are trying to encourage you both through through the cost, if nothing else, to switch to electronic versions of the books. And I think there are probably some advantages to that for you as far as searchable qualities and things. However, I this is one of these books that I think is worth keeping on your bookshelf throughout your career, because there are a number of things here I think you'll find that you'll want to refer back to at times over the years in your profession. So think about that, and think about not selling this book back if you can help it. I'm a book collector, so I have a preference for hardback books, and you'll hear that as time goes on. So in any event, this Hepworth textbook is one of the primary books that we're going to be working out of, and well, as I said, I think you'll like it. This book's been around a long time, and there's a lot of good things in there for you. Now, the one thing I will tell you about this particular book, though, that I did notice again as I was reading through it this second time or third time, that much of the material in this is really focused upon. It almost sounds a little like they're talking about a therapy relationship when you read about the skills and the approaches to clients. And what I want you to consider is that while certainly many of you are going to wind up in a clinical social work setting and working in therapy with clients, think of these in terms of therapeutic rather than therapy skills, therapeutic interventions rather than therapy interventions, because you do provide therapeutic interventions in every setting that you work with individuals in social work. And so this isn't something that is only focused upon therapists. And please, please keep that in mind as time goes on. The second book is a little bit denser, and it's a very big textbook. It's Eileen Gambrell's Social Work Practice, A Critical Thinker's Guide. This is a very interesting book, and in fact, as you read through, as particularly the first third of this book, I think you're going to find that much of what Gambrell says seems to contradict the validity of much of. I don't know. It just seemed to me that it contradicts a lot of what Hepworth and his associates say in the other primary textbook, and it's just going to be interesting to see what your response to that is and your reaction to that is as the semester goes along. I really see this particular book as really kind of three textbooks in one, and it's at times I almost feel as though she is trying to cover too much in one book. At times I think you'll find that the read is a little repetitious, but in any event, there's a lot of good information in here. So the one part of this book, and one of those sort of mini textbooks I think is in here, is all about critical thinking, and particularly the first several chapters in this book, I believe you're going to find might cause you to step back and think twice about accepting the kinds of things that you're reading in your classes, and gives you good reason to do that. I mean, I really and also I like the way that she goes about focusing upon our need to intervene with the system, and to challenge certain things in our system. So you'll see that as you read through that. There's also another one of these sort of mini textbooks in here is that a lot of her chapters deal with behavioral interventions, and we're going to read most of those chapters. And maybe that's her purpose, because maybe she believes that the behavioral interventions are the most valid type of interventions when it comes to evidence-based practice, because you know there's a lot of ways to test all those things out. These are things you see, not that you label. And so you'll see a lot of stuff in here that is a behavioral focus. And for those of you that have had any behavioral intervention classes, you know, some things will sound very familiar. If you're intrigued by what she writes, I would encourage you to consider finding some other behavioral intervention courses to take if you can during the course of your education, because they can be very helpful. And finally, the other mini text that I see in here, of course, is the one about evidence-based practice. And in many respects, I believe it's almost as though she's kind of selling evidence-based practice to you. Again, this is part of what this course is all about, is teaching you about evidence-based practice, and so you'll be exposed to that in here as well. So again, a lot of chapters to read. We're skipping some chapters on families and groups in this book. I'm also skipping one or two chapters where she really gets into research stuff, and it's not that it's not important. And if you really want to know about this more now, you should read those chapters. But I know that you're going to have a research course in if you haven't had it already in your master's training, and I think you're going to have somebody there that's a lot more knowledgeable about the ins and the outs and intricacies of research in that class than you're going to get from me right now. I've had several research courses over the years. It's been many years, and you know, you're gonna get better training from other instructors with that. So anyway, we're skipping over that because that's another thing you're going to get elsewhere in your training. There's just too much to read in these books to be able to cover the whole thing. Okay. The third textbook that is required is Barry Cornoyer's Social Work Skills textbook, or social work skills workbook rather, and it kind of speaks for itself. When you read through this material, it's I'm trying to time the assignments of the chapters in this book to the content of the other two books that we're reading as we go along. And so this is a workbook style. It's going to be lighter reading, I think, and you'll see there's a lot of exercises and things for you. I'm not going to ask you to turn any of these in to me. At least if I do, it'll be something that, you know, will be a separate little project. Or you may find some discussion board questions, for instance, coming out of this textbook or whatever. But the exercises in this workbook are really for you to do for yourself and not for me. So now, when we get to the tests, some of the materials, some of the questions in this book are going to find, or some of the material in this book, I should say, are going to find its way into your biweekly quizzes, as with the other two textbooks as well. That's this book. I haven't been that familiar with it. I'll be reading through some of this as you're reading through it as well. So we'll see how this works into the material. There is also a recommended textbook, and there are no assignments from this. This is not going to figure in any grading elements, you know, specifically as far as I'm concerned. I have been told, however, and this is another one of those books that I have a much earlier edition of, somewhere on my bookshelf. I still have it, in fact, and it's just a great resource for you. And again, another one of those books that and actually all four of these books, but this is another one of those books that I hope you'll put on your shelf and keep on your shelf, because there's just a lot of good things in here for you to refer back to over the years. A lot of guidelines and ideas for you in your practice. So look through this book as well. I know this stack of books is a pretty expensive proposition for you, and I hope it doesn't create too much of a burden for you as we go along. So the course syllabus is available to you in the course menu, and I think I have gone through and revised and added to and taken out and everything so many times now that I think I do finally have the finished product ready for you. We may still find, and if you find little odd things in this syllabus that don't belong there or don't make sense, please call them to my attention, and we'll get them corrected. Please find the course syllabus in Blackboard If you haven't already, print it out and keep a hard copy with you throughout the semester. You should always do that. Uh, there I have to tell you that it's subject to change because things come up sometimes, or things don't work out quite like we planned or whatever. If there's any changes made to this syllabus, I intend to stick to what we have here, but if there are changes that are to be made, there'll be relatively minor ones, and I'll keep you posted if any changes are made, and I will post all the changes on the course syllabus link in your manual. I'm sorry, in your Blackboard course. Now, the syllabus tells you this is how you get your points in this class, participation and attendance. Blackboard tells me when you check in and all those kinds of things. And I mean, this just basically is like, are you really participating in discussion boards? I mean, really discussing in discussion boards. Um, are you regularly involved with your group, or is your group having trouble getting you to engage in their activities together? Those kinds of things. I think, certainly participation in collaborate sessions is another area that will be something that will impact this grade as the semester goes along as well. So we're going to go through each of these areas here in the next several slides. We'll just move along here. But altogether, you have 650 points possible in this class, not counting the bonus. Now, I understand that Blackboard has some weird ways. I've never quite figured out exactly how this is done, but the Grade Center like averages out things and tells you what your grade is, what your average is. And one of the things that screws this up for my classes is that I offer bonus points that are optional. So if you have and those bonus points usually are just extra discussion boards. So if, say, one week you have two discussion boards, and so each of them are worth 10 points, you can choose whichever one you want of the two of them, or you can do both. It isn't one is the one you have to answer, the other is a bonus. You can make it however you want. And so in the Grade Center, I just put in the number of points you earned in that particular project. So if you have two discussion boards and you opt not to answer the second one, it's a bonus, there will be 0 in there, not because you got a failing grade, but because, you didn't earn any points in that particular project. So Blackboard may see that as an F. I don't. I just see it as 10 points you didn't earn. That's all. So, and you might get somewhere else. So anyway, all that to say is just keep in mind 650 points is 100%. You can actually earn 30 points over that, and maybe actually a little bit extra here and there. But 650 points give you 100%. So in the end, if you want to know what your grade's going to be, you just have to figure out how many points you could have earned, how many you have earned, and that'll tell you what your grades are. The grading scale is I think pretty much that says based on 600 points total, and I'm going to change that right here in front of your very eyes. It should be 650 points total. I don't know if I guess that'll keep. And so anyway, it's standard university grading scale. Already talked about participation and attendance. That's worth 50 points. Discussion boards. I know discussion boards can be pretty perfunctory, and I really do look for people to discuss things, not just to respond so they get their points. And how you earn points, these are each worth 10 points. I'm going to give you a question or a prompt, and you respond to that with a response of 200 words a minimum. More is preferred, but 200 words a minimum. And then after you have made that initial response, within a few days after your response, you're going to go back in and read classmates' responses and respond to at least 2 of them. So you'll have an original post of 200 words or more, and then 2 responses to classmates' posts, which don't have to be 200 words long. They can be shorter, but they should be meaningful posts, something substantial. So not just I don't agree with you, or I agree with you, but in addition to what you say, blah, 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 or I agree with you because, or, that kind of thing. So that, you're actually talking about it in your discussion board. You're not just saying yes or no. And so this is how discussion boards become discussions. Now, subscribe to your posts if you're not familiar with the discussion board format. And when you subscribe to your post, you get a notice, I think through email, that says somebody has responded to your post. And so you'll know, and you go back in. And feel free to respond back to that person. Again, make it a discussion. Now, our learning units are going to open on Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. By the following Sunday night, you should have made your original 200 word or more post. Okay, so you have a week. And what I prefer you do is to go through the material from that week before you respond to the discussion board, because the discussion board should be related somewhat to your readings. Okay, so in a week you make your original post, and then by the Thursday following that Sunday, so this is now 10 or 11 days since the post first surfaced, by that Thursday, a week and a half later, you should have responded to 2 of your classmates' posts. By that following weekend after that, I will go in and grade your discussion boards. So, it's basically from the time that the discussion board opens, it's going to be close to 2 weeks before the grade's going to surface. Occasionally there's a second discussion board for extra bonus points. So 140 points altogether. I have 14 discussion boards, and I think we don't have a discussion board in the last week of the class. We actually have, although I have a 16 weeks schedule because of the break week, we only have 15 weeks of class, and you don't have a discussion board in the last week since that's finals week. You do have a test to take that week, but that'll be it. Now, ethics studies. This is what I'm going to do is present you with some ethical dilemmas, and I am going to assign you to groups. Most of your groups will have 3. One group will have 2. I don't know why. Well, they don't think about these things when they distribute students, but it's always an odd number, and there's just no way to divide 11. It's just the number of enrollees I have into something even, and so I think what I'm going to do is have 3 groups of 3 and a group of 2. Now, the groups that you're assigned for this ethics studies is also the group that is going to do the major project for the term paper in your presentation. So get to know each other well and establish a positive working relationship with each other, because you're going to be working together throughout the semester. I'm going to give you an ethical dilemma, and I anticipate giving each group a different ethical dilemma, and I hope to be able to continue to do that throughout the semester. Some of you may get one that another group had earlier in the semester. I mean, that kind of thing. But I will be giving you a new ethical dilemma every 2 weeks. I think this starts in week 4, as I recall. I think your first test is week 3. And so in the weeks in between the tests, you will have this ethics study. And I'm going to give you a format, but basically what it is, you're going to weigh the alternatives in the ethical dilemma. What if I do this? This ethical issue is this ethical issue is that, this ethical issue is that. What is what are the pros of looking at it through this ethical lens? What are the pros and cons of it looking through that ethical lens? That kind of thing. Weighing this out, comparing them, and then reaching a conclusion about what should be done. And your group may not reach a consensus, and if that's the case, or a unanimous decision anyway. If that's the case, then you can mention that and conclude that the group couldn't reach a agreement on this. But that's the way it is. Ethical situations. Ethical dilemmas are pretty vague. That's why they're dilemmas. And so sometimes, you just have to weigh the alternatives. And the idea is to get this discussion going among you as to which is the best and why. What are the pros and cons of each? And so please keep your copy of NASW Code of Ethics on hand. If you don't have it, I know you can get it from the website, from the NASW NASWDC.org, if the NASW website, if you don't have it otherwise, but you probably got it. It was revised and effective January 1st, 2018. So there are some new aspects to the current code. So that will be 6 different times you'll do this, and you're gonna work in your group site. You're gonna put one paper together. I would suggest either you select the best writer and have them write all the time, but my suggestion would be, to kind of take turns on writing it up, giving one person the assignment to write it up, and alternate it, and 6 is divisible by both 3 and 2, so you can do that evenly, and you'll submit it in well, it's called a group file exchange, basically, where you can also exchange files back and forth, with each other. But you can your final let's say paper, and this is 300 words in length, so this is about a page and a half, maybe something like that. I don't know, you know. Again, 300 words length minimum will be submitted in your group file exchange to me, and I'll read it and grade it and comment back. So for those of you that haven't done group work in Blackboard before, you'll have a group work site that will be just you and your group members, and I get the chance, I can look in and do look in. So, but I mean, don't other classmates will not be able to see into your group site and so on. So 6 studies times 20 points each, 120 points total. As far as the discussion boards are concerned, there's a post, and I haven't written this up yet, but I'm gonna write one up about how to write up a good ethics study also, and post it in there. But you'll find a good description of how I grade discussion boards and everything, probably too thorough, in the course menu. And also, I think there's one. I don't know if I go into how I grade them in the course calendar or not, but there is a segment in there about timelines, at least for when discussion boards are due. Now, your group paper, this was one of the hardest parts for me in figuring out how to approach this class. This is a practice course, and I had some ideas back and forth about maybe having you pair up and kind of do role plays and act out client scenarios and things like this. But in the end, I decided that I just think that there's other ways of going about practice issues without going through role plays and things. And so what I'm going to do is assign you your groups. The groups that you're assigned for the ethics study are going to work on a term paper together. You're going to present one paper to me, and I'm going to assign you to a client group or a client problem type in Alaska. And I want you to identify what the issues are for that group or that particular treatment problem, what kinds of interventions are needed on a micro, meso, and macro level. For instance, what are the preferred things? And I want you to consider the use of the evidence-based practice techniques in determining what the best interventions are. Okay, and then you're going to prepare this in one paper of about 5,000 words, and I think that works out to somewhere between 12 and 15 pages. Now, that's not a horribly big paper when you think about 2 or 3 people working on it together, and maybe part of me says I should make this bigger, but you have so much reading in this class. I just think that I don't want to overdo this, and so 5,000 word paper is plenty. So you're going to turn that paper into me, and that will be due early in week 16, which it is actually after you're going to do your presentation. So during weeks 14 and weeks 15, the Collaborate sessions, at least part of them, are going to be dedicated to your groups presenting your research and your findings. You should put together a PowerPoint or keynote or Prezi presentation, however you want to do it. I don't know if Prezi works in Collaborate though. We're using Collaborate Ultra, by the way. So I don't know. You'll have to see what actually works before you put anything together. Make sure it's going to work in. And I know that PowerPoint slides will go into go into Collaborate Ultra, but check that out before you use any other kind of variation on that. But in any event, your presentation 20 to 25 minutes long, and then time afterwards for questions from your classmates, which I trust will come. Uh, and So I think your presentation is probably going to be a half hour or so. When we did presentations in Collaborate last semester, none of them none of them fit within the timelines. So we're only going to do two a week this time. We're not even going to try to do more than two. Remember, we have an hour and three quarters, and I always have to talk a little bit about whatever in those classes. So anyway, I think that'll go well. So your presentations will be week 14 and week 15. Your papers will be due early in week 16, which is the last week, which is the finals week. That'll give me a week to grade them and get them back to you before the end of the semester. The presentation's worth 80 points. The paper's worth 120 points. There's a 200-point total in this particular part of the project. Now, I have had not in my graduate classes, but in undergrad courses, I can tell you that I have had groups that have a loafer in them, or even two loafers in them, and there I address that in the syllabus and also in, I believe, in the somewhere in the course as well, how you're going to handle that. I expect that the group will deal with this first, because in social work we're going to be working in groups of people from all sorts of disciplines, and that means all sorts of ideas about how things should be done, all sorts of timelines, all sorts of paces and tempos to their work. Some people are going to be procrastinators. Some people are going to be OCD and want to get everything organized and done and completed right away, that kind of thing. You have to work together with people of all types, and so this is kind of real practice stuff. And so I in this course, I really don't expect there to be problems with that. I think you all have gotten as far as you have because you know how to get along and how to work together with other people, and you understand your responsibility to your group mates. Don't leave them dangling. Start working on your group project once it's assigned. It's probably going to be assigned in week 3 or week 4, I would think. Start working on it. Start organizing things. Start talking about how you're going to divvy things up, everything like that, right away. Don't wait until a couple weeks before the end of the semester. You're going to drive your group mates crazy if you do that. So more on that later. But in my undergraduate classes, I actually have dates by which students have to show up in the Blackboard group, and I give them points if they do, and don't give them points if they don't. But I'm not going to do that in this class because you all, I'm sure, are past that now and can work together responsibly. However, if you have someone that isn't working, read through what I say in the syllabus about this, but let me know after you've talked with that person. If they're not responding, let me know, and I'll look at how to deal with it from there. I may tell you, just keep trying. I may decide to take some action to sanction the person who isn't participating. One other thing, any written things, like if you're doing research in this paper, you are required to turn it, now not to me, okay, but to your group. You're required to turn in the written portion of your written project no later than a week before its due date. So if it's the beginning of week 16 that your paper is due, and I'll give you a due date when I sign the papers, then your written portion is due to your group and your file exchange a week before that date. Okay. You will have 7 bi-weekly quizzes, 20 questions, mostly multiple choice. There could be a few short answer essay style questions. I'm working out of 3 different textbooks here and varying helpfulness from the textbooks in terms of test banks and things like that. And so we'll see how these evolve, but mostly they're going to be multiple choice. You will have 2 opportunities to take your test. You will take it in Blackboard. You don't have to go anywhere for it. You can have your books open. The only thing I ask is that you do your own test, and to that end, the questions you get will be different from the questions that your fellow classmates will get. I mean, you're going to get some of the same questions, but they're going to be mixed up, and they're coming from a pool. And so, you're not going to get the same questions other people get, but they will be timed. So you'll have a certain amount of time in order to complete your test, and I'll give you ample time for that. But once you have opened the test, you have to finish it. And if you don't, then the test will close at the end of that time period, and that'll be your score. So in other words, be prepared before you sit down to take the test. Well, that's really all I have to say. Most of these questions are coming from a test bank, virtually all of them actually, and so well, for what it's worth, I don't know how picky they are just yet. We'll see, but in any event, 7 biweekly quizzes I think is starting in week 3, and again they're identified in the course calendar and in the syllabus as to what weeks they are. Now the tests will open at 12:05 on Wednesday morning of the week, so week 3 on Wednesday at 12:05. This to give you, well, this will be after our collaborate session, okay? And it'll give you a little bit of time to maybe do some reading before the collaborate session. And they will close the following Sunday night at around midnight. So you have, 5 days there to take that test. If you don't like the results of your first attempt, you can go back. You don't have to come back to me. You just go back in and you can take it a second time, and the higher of your 2 scores will be the one that's recorded in the grade center. But once that test is closed on that Sunday night, it's no longer available to you, so don't miss the test window. Told you this a couple times already. There'll be a couple extra discussion boards, so worth up to 30 points during the semester. And I would encourage you to take advantage of them, because you just never know if you miss a test, or you really bomb out on a quiz, or I don't know what, those points may be more meaningful to you by the end of the semester than they are early in the semester. When you open your Blackboard course, it opens to announcements. New announcements will be on top. Please always look and see if there's something new there, because this is where I share important notices to you, and I really want you to make sure you don't miss it. Announcements are also going to be sent to your university email account. If you're seeing announcements on the announcement page that isn't going to you in email, you got a problem with your email account, and you need to talk to IT about that. But please always check to make sure you're up on the latest announcements. Where course content is for me, I call it weekly course content, and there's a button on your, you probably already found it on your Blackboard menu. And this is where each week you click on weekly course content, and then you're going to see week by week new learning units open. They're only going to open as the date comes, and it's going to be Sunday morning at a little after midnight. They'll open each week. You click on the link for that particular week, and then you're going to have a series of slides. And this is pretty much what it's going to look like. There will be some additional slides here and there, but quality matters. My guide for setting up your courses in the university want us to tell you what your learning objectives are for every week. There's a slide that gives you the reading assignments or other activities for the week. There'll be a collaborate link in weekly course content. There's also one on your course menu. Weekly recorded lectures. Now this is another thing I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with this, because we're going to have more frequent collaborate sessions. There may be fewer recorded lectures, and I hear even though I don't have a live audience, I can already tell there's a few cheers going on in the background there. But I'm probably going to do some recorded lectures, but I'm working out of 3 textbooks here, and so I'm going to probably be combining things rather than doing lectures for each chapter. So anyway, I haven't quite figured out how that's going to happen yet, but just look for recorded lectures. You'll have them probably in most weeks, most certainly in the weeks where we don't have collaborate sessions, and we'll get to that in a second. There's a link to your discussion boards called Response to Readings that will be in your weekly course content. You'll either have a reminder for your ethics study or a quiz for a link for your quiz. You will have the course lecture slides such as these available to you in case you want to print them out. or to refer back to them without the sound, and then a closing slide usually where I kind of sum things up. So this is the kinds of things you can look for each week. There are, so don't miss these things. Now at this point I have 9 Collaborate sessions, including the first week, scheduled. We don't have Collaborate session in the second week. Just, I know Labor Day is on Monday, but KPC always didn't have classes on Tuesday after Labor Day in order to compensate for the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday when you don't have classes over Thanksgiving. So I'm not quite sure how. Well, in any event, we're not going to have class on next Tuesday night, the Labor Day week, just in honor of Labor Day. And also because I want to give you time to really get rolling on your readings and those kinds of things. So look for some recorded lectures in that week as well. In the weeks where we don't have a Collaborate session, what I'm intending to do, by the way, with Collaborate sessions is probably to have, spend some time going through some slides and lecturing a little bit on whatever the material might be. I don't know. We'll see as time goes on with this. But then I'm also going to have activities, and I'm going to break you off into little groups, not necessarily your project groups, but we'll mix it up so you can interact with other people as well, and kind of report back to the class kind of thing on whatever the topic is for the week. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for Collaborate. If you guys have other ideas, I'm open to hearing what they might be. So let me know if you've got ideas. Again, we're going to be using Collaborate Ultra. It seems to be an easier format. And I hope Collaborate works well for all of you. I know that there's a problem with some of you who have limited bandwidth, and so I just hope that's not a handicap for you. Let me know if it's too much of an issue. In the weeks we don't have Collaborate, I will be available to you. Now, again, I'm 4 hours ahead of you, so when we're quitting class at 6:45 your time, it's 10:45 my time, and but I'll be okay. Just if you need me in the weeks when we don't have Collaborate and you want to meet with me, consider those office hours for me. I'll be happy to meet with you, but just tell me ahead of time. Last time I did this, for a few weeks, I kind of sat around during the Collaborate hours thinking, when we didn't have a Collaborate meeting, thinking somebody might show up, and nobody ever did. And so this semester I'm saying, tell me ahead of time if you're going to want to talk to me, consult with me, if you want to have some private time with me and collaborate during that time, and I'll make myself available to you. Otherwise, you can use this for groups, and I think you can create your own Collaborate groups. And if not, I can certainly give you a Collaborate room if you can't do it yourself. If you want to, if your group wants to get together and meet during that time, that's an excellent time for that. You can catch up on you might have, and probably will have, a few more lectures in the weeks we don't have Collaborate than we do, and so you can catch up on those lectures during that time, or previous lectures perhaps. You can catch up on some readings, the voluminous amount of readings that you have this semester. I almost feel guilty for all of it, but we have to cover this stuff. So anyway, there's a number of different things you can do during this time when we don't have Collaborate, but most of the weeks we're going to have Collaborate, and you're going to have to do that stuff anyway. So, okay. I don't need to go through this with you. I think, just a brief reminder that in online communications, we don't see each other's body language. We can't hear tone of voice. We don't, sarcasm doesn't translate very well, etc., etc., etc. So please be conscious of this. While I want my students to feel free to be honest in class, we need to do that in a way that isn't offensive or hurtful to others, of course. And, of course, we never denigrate other people. If we disagree with something, we're disagreeing with the idea, not with the person, etc., etc. Now, if you should run into any situation, circumstances in class or also otherwise, for that matter, of an abusive nature, of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, sexual assault, any of that, as well as, aggression and those kinds of things, please do let me know, and I'm certainly, I am actually a required reporter in some situations. So you know, it's really up to you in terms of whether you come to me or not. But in other situations, I don't have to, and so just let me know if there's any problems going on, and I'll deal with it according to university Title IX requirements. Try as much as possible outside of those kinds of situations. If somebody says something kind of stupid, offensive or whatever, try to forgive the person and assume that it's not intended to be that way. Maybe talk to that person calmly about it. We are social workers after all, but you know it's not required. And let me know if you run into problems in this area. Again, I don't expect that will happen. Yes. So finally, this is the last slide for this presentation, and your discussion board this week is really going to just focus upon introducing yourself. And I know you guys know each other for the most part, and I don't know you that well, and I know a few of you from other classes, but most of you I don't know. And so this is an opportunity for me to learn something about you, but also I'm looking for something that maybe you haven't been asked to share with each other. And so um, what work experiences have you had in the field? And you may know this already, but what experiences have you had? Where are you currently working? If you're currently working in the field, not only professional but paraprofessional and volunteer roles, all those kinds of things. And just real interested in kind of knowing where you're coming from in this field. And maybe, if you want to write a little bit about the agency you worked for, that's fine too. Now, this is a public forum to the extent that everybody in the class and I see it. And so keep that in mind. The public doesn't see it, but, we should be agreeable to agreeing that we keep things that are said in our discussion boards, in the discussion board, so to speak. But in any event, you know, just don't say anything that might make things uncomfortable for anybody. But please, let me know, what you're doing in the field, and also if you haven't worked in the field yet, where you intend to work in the field. And then the other question is, what really brought you to social work as a profession? Why are you in this course of study, and what motivates you to be helping people? Okay, and photos. I always encourage photos, not only now but at any time. But that's purely optional. It just always kind of illustrates things, and especially for me, just see the face behind the name. I think you all get together in intensive weekends and things, but I don't get to see you there. So, think about including photos here and there. Again, not that's just purely voluntary. At least 200 words. Please write more than that if you have the time and the opportunity. And remember to go back. After you've made your first post by the end of the first week, go back a few days later and respond to other people's posts, and I don't know, talk about each other and maybe your experiences or whatever. I mean, talk about each other. I mean, talk with other people about what they said is what I'm trying to say, and maybe comparing your work experiences, things like that. Okay, and remember, subscribe to your thread and to any thread you're interested in, so that you get noticed when somebody responds. Okay, that's all for this discussion. I always tell myself I'm going to keep it at 30 minutes, and I never do. But I hope that this has been helpful to you, and I'll be seeing you on Tuesday night, or if you're listening to this after our first Collaborate session, we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Okay, so let me know. You have my email and phone numbers. Let me know if you have any questions. By the way, we were told recently we're not supposed to text with students, and I don't know why. I think it's got to do with FERPA and privacy. So I don't care if you text me, but I guess the universities, whoever protects privacy in the university, does, and so write to me, email or phone me, and it'll be safer that way. Okay, I'll be talking to you later. Bye for now.